Hello everyone, welcome back to another Saturday Anything Goes series. Tonight I thought we'd step over to the masculine side, and I love the Sailing Home stamp set. It pairs so beautifully with High Tide from last year or the year before, I think. They're very complementary to each other, and anytime I pull those two out, I also pull out my Waterfront, because the water part here comes from High Tide, but the mountains come from Waterfront. And so we'll be using all three of those tonight to make this box. Sometimes we need gift packaging for the men in our life. So I thought I would show you tonight how easy it is to make this box. And it's a pretty good size. It is 7 inches tall, 2 inches wide, 2 inches deep. It will take less than a sheet of Whisper White for the base and a 6x6 piece of colored cardstock to make the lid, and all kinds of fun little embellishments. Let me show you how this is done. Now I'm using a slightly different color palette. With this one, I used Whisper White, but the color part was Balmy Blue for the lid and also for the sky. And then I used Night of Navy for the water and Gray Granite for the mountains. And then my lighthouse and my sailboats are all different colors. I just chose blends that I thought would go well with it. And I really like the way it looks. Tonight, though, we're going to just be a little bit different. We're still staying with the blues and the grays, but we'll use Seaside Spray, Pacific Point, and Smoky Slate. All right, let me move this out of the way. And the first thing that we're going to need is a sheet of Whisper White that is cut to be 8.5 inches by 9 inches. And the first thing that I did, and it's very hard for you to see this, let me see if I can bring it up, but to keep the bottom of my box clean, I made a mark, just a very light pencil line that is 2 inches from the bottom. And that way I know not to stamp below that. So we're going to use that as a guideline, and we'll go from that 2-inch mark all the way up to the top. This is really a lot of fun to do. I've already got my stamps mounted. So this is the water from High Tide. I've got my mountains here from Waterfront, and I have the seagulls from Sailing Home. And then once we're done constructing the box, we'll also have some die cuts of the lighthouse and the smaller boat that we'll put on there as well. And we'll stamp the lid with our compass rose. All right, move these off to the side because we do have a little bit of scoring to do. And so when I'm ready for that, I need space on my desk. Let's go ahead and open up our inks. This time I'll try not to get them confused. So I'm just going to lay them out across the top here. Ooh, my Pacific Point does not want to open all the way. There we go. And I love my Smoky Slate for mountains. The Gray Granite was really a good color choice for using with the Balmy Blue, but I want those mountains to look even a little more pushed to the background. And I thought the Smoky Slate would do that. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to lay in my water. And I want my water, where's my box? I want my water not to come up very high. So I'm really only stamping it, I think, one time here, or one, in other words, I'm not going one on top of the other. And so we'll do that in our Pacific Point. And this stamp is laid out so well. Now that it's inked up, you can see it has a curved edge and kind of a straighter edge. And what that means is that you can stamp one right after the other, and they pretty much blend in almost seamlessly. Now let me get a piece of paper out here, because I will stamp off the page. I want to keep my desk tidy. So we've got our Pacific point, and I always start off of the page so that it makes it look very organic. I'll just ink it up and come back, and you can see how the curved part really nestles in there very well. If you don't get it lined up perfectly, it's not a problem. We're going to be putting some sailboats and a lighthouse in there, so it will all come together. So one more stamp, and we are done with our water. So very, very easy. Let me just give that a quick wipe. And that's all I need my Pacific point for. So I'm going to go ahead and close that up. Next, I'll bring in my mountain. And it's basically the same thing. I'm just going to repeat stamp one right after the other. So I have this inked up. I'm coming off the page again. And I'll just start laying in my mountains. And if they come out not stamped evenly, that's great. It just makes it look like there may be some misty areas back there. Okay, so we're all done with our mountains. The last thing we have to do for our background is to do our sky. Any of you who joined me a couple weeks ago when I did another a card, I think it was that time, using the sailing home. I did it with stormy skies, and so I did a demonstration in there of how you can make clouds. Now I've got an awful lot of space here, but remember, we're going to have a 2-inch lid to go on top, so that will help take up some space. So all I'm going to do is bring in a sponge dauber. And I've washed this because it was a different blue that has since been retired. And even though it may look like it still has ink in it, it really doesn't. So I'm using that. I'm going to ink up my Seaside Spray. And I'm just going to start laying in some cloudy areas. So I'll start off the page here to get rid of some of the ink, and then I'll just come in and using this template that I showed y'all how to make, I'm just going to start laying in some cloudy areas. Now when you do this, you don't want to start there again, because then it just looks like, yeah, not very natural. So you can turn it over, you can move it up on the page, you can move it down on the page. So I think what I'm going to do is bring this over here. Again, I'm going to wipe some of that ink off before I come over and lay that in. And that's really all that we're going to do for the rest of this. Let me flip myself back over here, get off some of that ink, and just come in. So it's very easy. Light pressure is going to give you light ink. Darker pressure, of course, or heavier pressure, I should say, is going to give you a darker color. Also angle your template. So don't do them all straight across. Go ahead and angle your template, because that too will give you some interesting looking clouds. And this isn't a stormy day. This is just kind of a nice sunny day. So we're going to have some big fluffy clouds that are in this. So let me turn this back around. And just have fun with it. Don't think about it too much. My clouds always look much more natural if I am not even thinking about how I'm laying them out. And if you look in nature, it pretty much looks that way too. Now I've got 2 clouds going up here. I want to break that up a bit. So this time I'm going to start right in the middle of my page. And it doesn't really matter where you start. So I'll just bring these and lay them in. And then maybe I want some big fat fluffy ones over here. So we'll just continue this down. And as you can see, in not very much time at all, I'm going to have this all laid in. And let me see, I think I want to go this way with this one. Nope, that's too much like the one above. So do kind of watch your patterns a little bit so you don't have things that are too matchy-matchy. All right, I'm liking the way this is looking, and I really think by moving your template around and not just taking it straight back and forth that you can get some interesting looks. So let's just do a few more. And I'll bet you're wondering how, when I get down to this, I'm going to avoid going over my mountains. Well, I'm going to show you. All right, and let's take this one. Let's take this one way down here. And you'll notice I have some areas where I have more ink than others. And if I have too big a space, well, that's not a problem. Just bring your template up and fill some of that in. Easy breezy. All right, 2 more lines and we're going to be done with this. So as you can see, it goes pretty darn fast. So let's take this right here. Probably could have tapped off a little bit better and I missed a spot. I'm just going to go back over that. But your sky does tend to be a little bit bluer the closer it gets to the land. So I'm not going to fret about this. Just continue laying it in. And we'll be done in no time. So I hope you guys are all having a happy day. It's been nice and quiet around here. And it was actually so cool this morning when I stepped outside. All right, now let's talk about mountains because I'm getting pretty close right here. And I think what I'll do is just kind of with the top of my mountain is there. I think I'm gonna cover that just with the edge of my template. And then I'm going to come down here and just lay that in. So it's just skirting above. And I think I'm going to come up a little bit from there, but notice I'm covering my mountain. But I want to get down here a little bit. So that's why it's nice to use these little dips you have in the template you create. So we'll just do it like this. And if you get down to where you're close, that's fine too, because clouds sometimes do overtop the mountains. If you lived anywhere around the Rockies, Colorado and such, there are times where you can't see the tops of the mountains. All right, here's my last one, I think. Give that a little more color. Just so I've got good definition in there. Let me come back here and just touch this one up a bit. Just give it a little more color. All right, I think I'm liking that. I think I might just let that be. I'm going to even this out a little bit right here. And if you ever have an area where maybe you've got too much, don't worry, you can stamp your birds in there. So it's just an opportunity for placement. Okay, I'm happy with that. We're going to put up our Seaside Spray for now. All right, next thing I want to do is lay in my birds. So I will bring my birds in here. And for that, I'm just going to use good old Tuxedo Black ink. Makes nice birds. And you may notice I have a couple little gray lines here from where evidently I had some ink on the edge of my block. I'm not even going to worry about that. And remember, we're going to divide this into 2-inch sections. So be thinking about that when you are placing your birds, because you don't want to have all the birds in one panel and not in another. You also don't want them all on the same level. You want some higher and some lower. We will have a 1/2 inch tab to use to glue the whole thing together, but I don't even take that into account. I'm not going to decide where that 1/2 inch is going to go until after I've stamped. So I'm just almost treating this like a canvas. So I've got some birds here that are going to come off the page. And then, let's see, I think I want some more down here in that area. And then we'll have a few more way up here in the sky. So don't be afraid to get in here and put some birds in. You also can change the angle if you want. So we'll have some there. And then I like them kind of down there in the dips. So we'll put one there. And then we'll put another one there. All right, so I think we're okay. If when we do our scoring, we see that we have way more bird heavy in one panel and not enough in another, the beauty is it's a small stamp. So before we assemble it, we can always fix that. I'm done with stamping now. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna move all this stuff out of the way. And I'm gonna bring the scoreboard in. And the scoreboard's way bigger than my little work area here, but I'll try and get it to where you can see what I'm doing. Remember that our panel is 9 inches by 8.5 inches. And so we're going to score every 2 inches. And guess what, guys? You won't believe what I just did. I actually stamped on my 9-inch side when I meant to do my 8.5. Well, you know what? We're not going to worry about it. It just means our box will be a little shorter and have a bigger tab. That's the beauty of this. All right. I'm still going to go every 2 inches. So I've got 2 inches here, all the way down, 4 inches, 6 inches, and 8 inches. And then I do need my 2.5 inches that will make up my bottom. Remember, that's where I had my pencil line. And that's where I started my water. All right, that's all we need our scoreboard for this. So let me put that away. We'll bring it back in when we do our lid. Ooh, don't fall, don't fall. There we go. And let's go ahead and fold and burnish, and we have a bit of cutting to do. And the Whisper White is such a nice length for doing this. Not length, weight. Weight, Linda, weight. Okay, so now if you had done yours where you did your stamping on the 8.5 across, you would have 1/2 inch here. I actually have a full inch. Doesn't really matter because we need to, where this score line is here, and did I fold and burnish that? No, I did not. Shame on me. Let me do that. This bottom square here, or rectangle, we do not need. That is just extra. So we're going to cut that off. Also, I am going to give this just a little bit of a wedge here because when we put our box together, it reduces some of the bulk. And I'm going to do the same up here, just on the area that's going to be our tab. All right, so that's all the cutting we do on that side. For this side, we're just going to cut up each one of these, and these are going to form our bottom. Now, before we go too much further, we want to take a final look at our composition. So that's our lip. We'll turn that under. I have birds here, 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 here. I'm happy with my birds. So I think we don't need to do any additional stamping with that. All right, I'm going to put this aside for a minute because before we assemble it, let's start doing our lid. And this is 6 by 6 inches. What I'm going to do is take and score this before I stamp my compass rose. And the reason for that is that way I will know roughly the center of each of the areas so that I can stamp. All right, so this is really simple. We're going to score it 2 inches on each side. Really, really easy. And that is all of our scoring done tonight. All right. We will need to stamp here, 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 and here because the outer 4 are going to be our flaps to make our box. So let me get out my compass rose. I love this stamp. And see if I can look through the bottom of my bifocals to see where north is. There's east, so north is right there. I need a block. There we go. And let me just set this down and pick it up. I'll bring back in the Seaside Spray. Tone on tone stamping just really looks nice. And we're going to do it full strength. And like I said, we're going to do the middle ones and then the one in the absolute middle. And don't worry if your stamping ends up being a little faded. It just looks nice that way. Remember to turn because each side is going to be facing a different way. If you don't care where north is, then you don't have to worry about it. All right, that is all the stamping. We're going to fold and burnish this. Do a little cutting, and then we're going to have fun assembling. Now you'll notice I haven't put any sailboats or I haven't put the lighthouse in the main piece yet, and that's because I really want to get it assembled first before I attach those things. That way I know exactly where I want to put them. All right, for this it's really simple. We're going to cut up, and I always try to cut just this side of the score line, and then I want to wedge into it. Kind of took a hefty wedge there, but it'll be fine. So each side we're going to wedge, take that out, and then at the very bottom I'm also going to take maybe 1/4 of an inch off. That way I know when I put it together there won't be any parts sticking out, if you know what I mean. Do the same over here. And remember, the wedging we're doing on the flaps, not on the parts that we've stamped. And take a little bit off the bottom. You know, I've made these boxes so many times, I can almost do them in front of the TV without paying too much attention. My stamping, on the other hand, as you saw, I have to be a little more careful with making sure that I am got the right side of the paper upwards. All right, last one. And I'm going to give you a little tip when it comes time to make our lid. If you've done boxes before and you've made the lids the same measurement, you'll know sometimes it's really hard to get the lid on. It's almost too tight and you can end up with some buckling. So I'm going to show you how to get rid of that. We'll leave this piece to last. Bring back in this. And this is going to be pretty darn easy. I'm just going to put some tear and tape down here. And I'll probably do 2 runs of it since I end up having a whole inch instead of 1/2 inch. And I like my boxes to look neat. So I've got one close to one edge and this one's going to be close to the outer edge. And that way I shouldn't have any gapping. All right. Just peel this off. I love tear and tape. I liked fast views too, but I was just getting the hang of using it when they discontinued it. Sometimes I'm a slow learner. All right, I'm just going to fold that over so that I have more room to work, but all I have to do is fold this over, matching up the seam, and making sure my tops and bottoms are good. Just like that. Then I'm going to run my bone folder, since I have 2 strips of sticky tape there. Just want to make sure that there's a nice bond. All right, now we get to have fun. Which side do we want to be the front? So here's our seam, but you know, our seam is really almost invisible. So if you wanted that to be the front, I don't see a problem with it. That one's kind of nice. Let's do this one. I like it because we've got birds all over the place. And the reason that I said find your front is when it comes to folding your flaps, this one should be your front one, or the one that's at the front of your box is the last one you'll want to put in. So I'm going to do my sides like that, and then you pull this one over and you have a nice clean edge, just like that. If you find that any of these stick out a little, you can wedge them a bit if you need to, just to make sure that this one is the one that you don't take any extra off of. But you can see I kind of have some hanging over there. So I'm going to take care of that. Easy breezy. Just bring in my scissors and I'm going to take a tiny bit off of that edge. I'm also going to take a tiny bit off the top here. Not very much, but I don't want that sticking out either. Check your other flaps as well. If any of these are sticking out, you can fix those, but those are laying down nicely. So now what I'm going to do is bring out my liquid glue and we'll just put this together. Okay, so oops, didn't mean to stick you in there. There we go. So that flap, I would do my side flaps first and put them together. And I'm just going to put my bone folder in there and mush them. Okay, and then this is our front. So this flap is next to go down. And always try to make sure you get your edges. I don't like gaposis there. Okay, and then lastly, we'll do this. Bring that down and make sure that our edges line up. Just like that. All right. My bone folder is just long enough. So there we have that. Let's talk about decorating it, because that's the next thing I want to do. And so we wouldn't take up a whole lot of time, because when I get to coloring, I completely lose track of time. I went ahead and colored with the blends, 1 lighthouse and 3 sailboats. And you can do them any color you like. For inspiration on this one, I just went out and looked at pictures of lighthouses and just use that as an example. And then decide where you want things. On this one, I have a sailboat in the front. That's because I wasn't really crazy about my all red lighthouse. But you certainly can put your lighthouse in the front if you want. Again, I think I like the lighthouse where I have less going on. With all those birds you saw, I just about covered up 1 set of them. So I think I'm going to put my lighthouse on this side. And what I'm going to do when I glue it down, I know it's die cut already. I don't want to put it right in the middle here because, you know, I want to take it just about off the box because I can trim off the areas that are hanging over. And I just really like the way that looks. So for that, I'm going to use liquid glue again. I like being able to move it around in case I change my mind. And then, like I said, we'll just kind of, I'm going to try and cover up the water down here so it doesn't look like that piece of land is just floating. So just like that, and we'll come back and cut off areas that we need to once it's dried. All right, so I like that. Now, which sailboat should we do? Oh, I really like the way that one looks. But I test all my colors. I think I had my green sailed one in the other one as my front piece. But instead of having it all very pale like that, I think I want that pop of color right on the front. So I'm going to go ahead and this sailboat, and I'm going to put my sailboat at all different positions in the water, because when you view it like this, we don't want them all lined up in a row, right? So this one, I think I want right about there. Keep in mind, we're going to have a sentiment, and the lid will take up 2 inches, so you don't want to put it too high. So we'll put it right like that. And then you just work your way all the way around. Like I said, the hardest thing about doing this, I think, was choosing the colors for my sailboats. So that one's up there. I'm going to have this one all the way down and over here. I think I like it right there. And then for my final one, this one, I think, so we've got one that's kind of high, one that's low. So maybe we'll just do that one kind of mid-range. Right about there. I'm liking it. Now I can come back, and my lighthouse should be dry. So let's just cut off the bits that are hanging over. It's very easy to do. Come on, I say it's easy to do. I can't get my scissors in there. There we go. You want to stand it up and make sure it doesn't tip over. Well, that lighthouse really does look good though, doesn't it? But you know, that's the beauty of it, is you can have it, move it all different ways. If you've got it like that, it's nice to be able to see how it carries over. Or like that, again, it's almost like you can see movement within the landscape. Okay, last thing we have to do is I'm going to build the lid before I do the sentiment. And let me tell you why. On this one, I dang near got the sentiment strip too high. It just barely. You can see that the lid actually goes behind it. I had to put it on dimensionals because I had it up too high, but I didn't want to cover up my birds. So I'm going to save the sentiment to last. Let's look at how we're going to build the lid. So instead of just going in here, and we know this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, right? And we glue it all down and we pop the lid on. But that's where we run into problems. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set this box right in the middle when I build the lid. That way, there'll be just a little bit of room when I bring the panels up and glue them together. I know it's going to fit. So let's go ahead and put our glue. Remember, we're putting glue on the flaps that are not stamped. And we'll see if I can do this without getting glue all over my mat here. This is the other reason I like to use liquid glue, because when we're going to be pulling all this up together, it's almost hard to see some parts because you're doing it all at the same time. So with my liquid glue, I've got time to go in and make any adjustments. All right, so that's ready. I'll put my box right in the center and make sure that it's matched up with my score lines. And now I'm going to bring this side up, and I'm going to bring this side up and stick them together first. I know I've got glue on the inside and the outside, and then bring this flap up. And so you, as you can see, it can be a little hard to see what you're doing. That's why I like my liquid glue. So we'll make sure we line things up. Oops. Come on. Squidge in. There we go. All right. Now I can take this out. And the reason I built it around the bottom and not the top, because I needed to get my fingers in there. And we'll just tack it all down, make sure that it's stuck together nicely. All right. Moment of truth. When I put this on, look at that. It goes on without any problems. So that's a nice little tip to use when you're building lids for your boxes, is to build them around the base, and that way you know that they'll slide on with no problems at all. Got a little glue on there. That's when our glue eraser comes in handy. Okay. Last thing we need to do is our sentiment, and then some little braid trim, and we'll be done. And for the sentiment, set sail in the direction of your dreams, I think is what I'll use again for this. Although you certainly could, this one would fit as well. Any of these from High Tide would also fit on there. So let me pull that one out. It's much loved, as you can see. And we'll stamp this in the Pacific, what did I do? Pacific Point. I want it to be darker than the Seaside Spray lid. So I'll just ink that up well. Stick my tongue out. And remember, I'm going to cut this out, so I need to make sure that I had room all around. Now that went on pretty straight. Okay, I've got my big shot right over here. We're going to use the smallest stitch square. We'll just cut that off. And get this centered. And I do have the magnetic base plate on my big shot, but I've had it for a while, and it doesn't always keep the dies the way I put them on there. And sometimes I can't see until, hello, it's already been cut. So I'm just going to have a little insurance by using my washi tape. Sorry if the camera shook there. But there we go. All cut out. Carefully. There we go. Now, you certainly could cut a mat for this, but I decided, since we don't have a whole lot of room, that rather than do a mat, I'm just going to sponge the edge with Pacific Point. Let me get a clean sponge out here, because it will have much the same effect as putting a mat down. It will help it stand away from the landscape. All right, pretty darn easy. Now what we could do is bring in our Seaside Spray and our Compass Rose and a little bit of scratch paper. And let's put a Compass Rose right on there. Okay, where's my north again? Okay, I've got it this time. So that's full strength. Yep, I'm going to do it stamped off. It just kind of gives it a neat little something, something. So stamp off. Try to get in the center, but close is good enough. And there. I really liked the way it added a little more color to that stark white. Okay. Make sure that you have your front. You know which side your front is, and we decided this would be our front. Did we? No, this is our, hello. Well, shuckins. I thought I said this was our front. I'm going to cut off my birds if I do that, though. So guess what? This is going to end up being our front. And what we're going to do, and you can see just by sponging the edges with the Pacific point, how that really helps to set it off. Now I can put my sentiment down here, or I can go with the happy accent I had with the last one and kind of stick it up here and put it on dimensionals. And I kind of like the way that looked. So let's go ahead and put braid on our, well, I think I like that better. Sorry, my ADHD kicking in. There, that one's stamped a little straighter. To get the braiding, I picked up this braided linen trim that we have, and it is close enough to kind of the rope that you might see used around sailboats. And I thought what we would do is just wrap this around. So the last one, I only had one strip and I decided to do two more. The only thing I don't like about if you just wrap it is see how you've got that end kind of sticking up. So I'm going to cut pieces like I did before. Let me bring in my, where'd my tear tape go? There it is, right in front of me. So we want to make sure that I'm going to start this. I really do like, maybe I'll have the lighthouse. Yeah, let's have the lighthouse be the front. I'm liking that. All right, so let me turn this back around to the one I like the most. Come on, get on there. All right. So I'm going to start this in the back. And one wrap with the tear and tape should be all we need for 3 rows of the braided trim. And I want that right next to there. So, let go. Let me just cut that. Crikey, now I'm going to get it stuck all over the place. There we go. Right there. All right. Kind of burnish this down a little bit. It's the other reason I like putting the lid on, because you've got a little resistance there. And start peeling off our tear and tape. Come on, get on there. There we go. And I'm not going to tear it all the way down because I want to be able to lay this on my mat. And that will help me get my trim on fairly straight. All right, so we'll have one row right here. And I took it right up to the very edge, just like that. And once I get my first row on, I'm okay, but I just need to try and get my first row on straight. And that way my other rows should come out straight. So make sure you are connecting the with the tear and tape, because in a couple places I didn't get my tear and tape all the way to the edge. All right, and then we want to bring this to where it meets right there. And we will cut it off. Let me see if I can, how close I can get it and how straight. There we go. You can always come back and do a trim later if you need to, but that looks pretty good. And then we'll just repeat that 2 more times. I found that wrapping it with 3 pieces gave me the look that I wanted. Anybody remember macrame from back in the day? I don't know why that just popped into my head. Maybe because we used to use just about the same with twine or jute. Did we use jute back then? I think we used jute. I did not do much macrame because I just wasn't very good at it. I know there were people that had some fantastic hanging baskets and things, and I was always jealous. But who knew later in life is when I would find my creative talent, right? I just wasn't ready back then, I guess. All right, there's our last piece. And it may not be completely even here in the back, but it's close enough. And if you find, like right here, evidently my tear and tape doesn't come up that far, just take a little bit of your liquid glue. Well, hey, dang, there's everybody. I didn't know if I wasn't able to see you for some reason or if everybody just had things going on tonight. Hi, Jean. Hello, Marie. Hi, Amy. Hello, Sherry. You guys been doing fun things? Hi, Kathy. All right. All that's left to do is to add our sentiment. So as I said, I can either put it down here underneath the trim, or I can pop it up to where I can have it up just a little bit. And I really liked the way that looked. So let's see if I can make that same mistake again. Oh God, I won't even tell you guys. Well, I guess I will now that I've opened my mouth. I put my sentiment on upside down on the other one the first time. Luckily, I had not pressed down on the dimensionals. But it was like, okay, pay attention, Linda. Okay. So if I just rest the very top, because well, that one's kind of close to the top. Let me pull it down a bit. Like I said, if you don't press down firmly on them, a lot of times you can reposition them. There we go. So I've got a little bit of a lip up here that I can rest just on the edge there. So that should set in there nicely and still allow the lid to open and close. Look, it worked again. Woo! All right. So that's pretty much it. Now you could go on and, you know, if you want to do other die cuts and put them on there, you certainly can do that as well. But I really like the way this one came out.